born by the roadside in a broken down carriage, came into life on the run, found on the doorstep of a nearby orphanage. No one saw, no one saw. You'll never know him, he is the forgotten. His name is a word undone. You'll never know him, he is the forgotten. No one's son, no one's son. She had been born there in St. Bernadette, like brother and sister they were. Out of the two, she was always the strongest. No one's daughter, no one's daughter. You'll never know her, she is the forgotten. In the ocean, a drop of water. You'll never know her, she is the forgotten. No one's daughter, no one's You'll never know them, they are the forgotten. In the ocean, a drop of water. You'll never know them, they are the forgotten.
Wow, what a week it's been, everybody. First full week back to work. I actually didn't really do anything out here all week. It poured. Holy cow, did it pour. It poured bad for days here this week. And it looks like we're going to get more of the same coming through the weekend. I was hoping to get another good long progress video up for you guys, just to do them that style. But we're just going to do what we can do. But I have 10 more rafters to cut for the lower section of the gambrel roof on the western side of the building. So we're just working on that tonight. I have to try to get the joinery finished on these last 4 timbers. You believe that, guys? The last 4 timbers of the project. I have to try to get those done so that I can have the guys come back here next weekend and set the rest of this stuff. And then after that, it's rafters and it's metal. And then we, of course, have some siding to do. But that's not as big a deal. That roof is really my big white whale right now. We got to get that done. But so anyway, only the second time in this project you've seen me use a template. So what I do, when I go to do more rafters, I have to lay out more. When I go to do them, the next batch, I'll show you guys how I figure the rafters out. I kind of do it the Captain Stupid Mistake proof way, and that's what works for me, always has. So I'll show you guys how I do that. It makes it so much easier. Some things, you know, it's funny, I could figure out the joinery for this entire building with no issues. You know, a couple mistakes on measurements here and there it showed. I've had to fix them and deal with them. But when it comes to things, stringers, rafters, stuff like that, I'm more of a trace and hope kind of a guy, and I need to educate myself on doing it the proper way. I mean, most of what I do is usually fairly well self-taught. to where I'll research the hell out of it. You know, I don't really have anybody showing me how to do too much of this. I just learn as I go. So. All right, let's do a little actually explaining something. I've been doing so much time lapse lately. So much of that stuff I have not been explaining very much as I work. So I want to show you some knot types and what to do with them, say if you're doing rafters, things like that. Now I designed this building for number 2 grade lumber. This is a little bit, for the most part it is, except for this one knot. Now there's circumstances where I wouldn't want to use that with that knot right there, but I'm going to show you what I do to kind of maintain the structural strength. And I'll show you a couple different types that you want to look for, you want to try to avoid. Now I bought this rafter stock 14 feet long, most of it, because it allows me to slide my template up and down and avoid certain spots. This one I may not be able to avoid, but I can keep it on one end or the other. And that's kind of what you want to try to do. Now, knot placement on a piece like this is very important. I would rather have it near an edge like that, and I would rather put that knot so it's facing up. Fortunately, this timber, the crown goes the right way, so I can do that. Not timber, this board. If it was the other way, I wouldn't even use this piece, because as that weight pushes down on that, that's actually going to squeeze that in tighter. It'll still be fairly structural. I don't want it in the middle, because if that thing's in the middle, that's where most of the weight is, and most of the load on this rafter is at mid-span. So big thing I'm going to do, I'm going to have this up really high or really low. In this case, it'll be really high. Another thing, you can watch the edges of your knots, the coloring of them, and you'll be able to tell if that knot's going to come out or not on you. Now up here, it's not bonded to the side. It's not growing in. And I say that because you have a very sharp, definite line up there, but down here you see the knot lines, they blend into that wood pretty well, so this knot's probably not going to fall out even when this starts to shrink, and it will because it's rough cut green. And also the other thing we're also looking for what kind of grain structure is around this knot. It's actually pretty good around there. It didn't affect the grain structure too much. When it comes to about here, and kind of curves around it a little bit. Same thing up here, but it's not big pieces. Sometimes you'll saw stuff and that messed up grain will be through the whole piece, and you don't really want to use that for structural quality stuff. Other things I like to avoid if I'm building anything structural, I really avoid trying to get stuff like, I try to keep things like this out of what I'm building. And reason being, that grain is all over the place. You see where it's split a little bit right here. You get this kind of grain when you have a crotch come together, the trees grown together. That's what you end up with. And usually what happens, you see this bark line here, and down through there, that's a really weak spot. That's a good spot for that to fail. So you want to avoid stuff like that, putting it in your structures. The other kind of knot I like to avoid, depending on where it is, this is another one where I would use it on the edge and probably be just fine with it. It's a big knot, but it's not terrible. Of course, you get to the backside, it's quite a bit bigger. This knot right here, as this wood right here shrinks, this knot's going to pop out of here. You see where you have your very defined line right there? You come to the other side on edge, it goes all the way through both sides, and that dark line is all the way through there. This knot will end up popping out. So I don't know how much that helps you. A lot of you guys probably already know that stuff, but for the new people at it, it's something you want to look for when you're choosing rafter stock, when you're choosing any kind of stock for anything you're going to build with that's going to be structural. Now, when I'm woodworking, I'll take stuff like this all day long. It looks really nice when you work it into certain pieces. I don't like too much of it in one piece because I think it kind of makes it look gaudy, but a little accent here and there with something like that is kind of nice. So we're going to get back to cutting these rafters. We have 8 more to go tonight, and we should be able to rip them off pretty good.